So to start out with, we have to kind of talk about how the United States was dividing into two very different worlds in the North and the South, and why it took several political compromises in order to keep the United States together up to the point of the Civil War. So this is going to be specifically about how the United States compromised over slavery in the early 1800s leading up to 1860. So this map roughly shows the United States in 1820, but I'm really looking for 1819. And when I say sectionalism, what I mean by that is the United States was dividing into these two different worlds. North, these free states didn't allow slavery. In the South, where slavery was part of the everyday culture. And there are several reasons why this difference took shape. So in the North was industrializing with businesses, factories, manufacturing, specifically starting with textile mills. But they had a lot of business that didn't depend on free slave labor. And in the South, it still remained mostly an agrarian or agriculture-based society. And its climate allowed for this. They had long, hot, humid summers, and the crops, such as cotton, could be grown there effectively, which is labor-intensive. The invention of the cotton gin just expands this production of cotton and increases the demand for more slave labor. And so these two worlds are very different from each other. And so they had their own interests at heart, and politically they were very divided. So what did this look like? In the United States government, there was a balance of power between these slave and free states, 11 on each side in 1819. And so none of the different states and neither side could have an advantage over the other one in the House or the Senate. And that was fine until the United States continued to expand west and acquire new land. And every time that happens, this idea of slavery threatens to rip the United States apart because one side doesn't want to let it go, and the other doesn't want to see more land taken over by slave labor. That you can't compete with slave labor. Paid wage labor can't do it. So when we go west, these tensions increase. So to start off, Missouri had been wanting to come into the United States for a long time as a slave state. However, this would upset the balance of the government. And so there had to come up with a compromise in order to keep the balance. And the first compromise was pretty straightforward. If there's one that wants to be a slave state, let's make one that's a free state. And that's Maine. So they decide to actually take a part of what was Massachusetts, lop it off, and make it a new state into Maine. And they decide to allow that to keep the balance of power, and that's with the Missouri Compromise. A couple other things that come with the Missouri Compromise. For the North, obviously, Maine becomes a free state. For the South, Missouri is a slave state. And these two important pieces are necessary to understand how it still increased some of the tension. The Louisiana Territory had still been unorganized at this time. And what they said was any land north of Missouri's southern border from here on out would have to be free when states are organized. And I'll show you a map of that in a minute. And the other little piece, the southern slave owners could go up into northern free states and get their slaves that had run away. So to show you what this looks like on a map, this red line down here, right below Missouri, all the land in that tan unorganized territory by this law had blocked slavery forever. And this really upsets the South because all that land is no longer available for slavery to go into. And they don't control this land that's New Spain, Mexico, yet. So this changes. Several years later, the 1840s, the United States goes to war with Mexico, and they win. And they take all of this land that you see below. And we call this the Mexican Cession. It was 500,000 square miles of land. And, like I told you, more land, the question of slavery comes up. So what to do? Well, still had a balance of power. Didn't want to mess that up. So we come up with the Compromise of 1850. A lot of pieces to this. The North gets another free state in California. Slave trade is banned in the nation's capital. But this is what's really important, and the South got a lot from this. These new territories in Utah and New Mexico The government would not say slavery could or could not go there. They would merely let the new settlers who moved there vote on the issue directly, and they would decide. So if they didn't want it, they would vote no. This made the South very happy. So this is what the map looks like after that. Those new territories in orange I was talking to you about are open popular sovereignty. But still in question here is this unorganized territory, this Louisiana Purchase land. Technically should be banned from slavery. But a man steps in who wants to see this organized, mostly so that a railroad can be built, transcontinental railroad across the United States. And he knows he needs to organize it. He wants this to go all the way from California with a junction in Chicago where he owns land, so he would make money off of this as well. And in order to do this, those territories have to become states. So he knows that the South isn't going to like the idea of organizing this area into states because it's banned, so he comes up with a new compromise, and that is the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So it creates the two new territories of Kansas and Nebraska. People are going to be allowed to come settle there, and just like in the Utah and New Mexico territories, the use of this concept of popular sovereignty will be allowed, and the people will vote directly. And so this undoes the Missouri Compromise, where slavery had once been banned, and all of this land that's in this lighter purple now is open to slavery potentially due to popular sovereignty. So this upsets Northerners because they thought that land would be free, and now it's a contest. Will it be slave or free? And this is going to lead to a lot of violent clashes in the Kansas territory.